Afternoon, Jeanette Bruwer from Springfield Estate in the beautiful Robertson Valley, of course, in the winelands in the Western Cape of South Africa. We had a little chat before we got on the line, just giving you some context around what we're doing here around the Painted Dog, which is our members-only private South African wine import company or club. I gave you a little bit of context, but I think for today, what I would love to hear is a little bit more about, obviously, the Springfield Estate. We'd love to hear about yourself and what you do on the farm. Obviously, being in the Robertson area, you guys have quite a unique terroir. You've got quite a unique geography and climate there. So we'd love to talk about some of that. And then ultimately, yes, of course, talk about the beautiful wines that you guys produce out of that region, out of that farm. But before we get into all of that detail, Jeanette, maybe you can just give us a little intro to you, who you are, and how you fit into the world of Robertson and Springfield specifically.
Good morning, fellow South Africans, and also newcomers to the Wine Club. And good morning to Warren. Thank you for having Springfield in your Wine Club. I'm Jeanette Bruwer, as we pronounce it in Afrikaans, which is my mother tongue. I'm the 5th generation of Bruwers farming the beautiful Springfield Estate. And the 6th generation is also already part of it. And the 7th generation is starting to get born now. So we are so lucky, so fortunate to run Springfield as an entirely family business with no outside intervention. When Warren asked me, what is my title? I said, we don't have titles at Springfield. We're here not to make laws, and we're here not to have titles. We're here to make the best wine that we possibly can with the terroir that we have here, with the beautiful climate that we have here, and with absolute minimal intervention. We believe in winemaking is what the soil gives you, and the winemaker is just the vehicle to express the terroir that we do. So each of our wines that are proudly exhibited here behind us has got a unique sense of place, a sense of where it comes from. A lot of you knows the Life from Stone. We'll talk about the wines later on, but that is what we try and do. We have unique winemaking techniques. But let me first tell you a little bit about Springfield Estate.
It'd be amazing.
In 1652, the Dutch Indian Company thought it well to establish a halfway house in Cape Town to service the ships between India, the spice route, and Europe. They needed a halfway house to bring new fresh water, to curb scabies that was often on board. And about 30 years later, our family moved to South Africa for a completely other cause. We were Protestants in France, in the Loire Valley, and the Catholics didn't like the Protestants that much in those days. And the religion was so strong that you would put your wife and children and some bundles of vines under the arms on a little ship heading for a country that is completely wild, that had no hospitals, very few doctors, that has just been, an outpost. And the French Huguenots, as they were called, started the wine culture in South Africa. Move on a couple of hundred of years, 9 generations later, and we are finding ourselves as the minders of the land, the 5th generation of Springfield Estate in Robertson. Now, if you look at the map of South Africa and you find the true most southern point, it's called Cape Agulhas. We are 60 miles directly north of that. And please, when you are visitors to Cape Town, don't believe the tourist agencies who tells you that the most southern tip of Africa is the Cape of Good Hope. It's not. It's Cape Agulhas, and that's where the two oceans really meet. The climate area the climate in the Robertson area is unique.
Mm.
In a normal year, we only have 140 millimeters of rain for the whole year, and that mostly falls in the winter time. So then we must gather and save enough water for the summer months, because we don't have water in the summer months. But that's a very good thing, because we have far less concentration of disease, pesticides, or pests, insects, stuff like that, because we are a very dry, almost arid climate.
Mm.
If it wasn't for water, we wouldn't have been able to farm here. But we have now drip irrigation, and we can put the water where the plant needs it, at the roots, when the plant needs it. And we don't have to rely on water that falls from the sky and causes much of the pests that we all know so well about in California this year. They also had quite a high incidence of oidium and downy mildew due to unwanted rain in the wrong time of the year.
Right.
Having said that we have 140 millimeters of rain, I must also point out that we have a 2.5 meter evaporation. So it's per annum. So that is, if you started with 2.5 meters in a dam, that dam will be empty by the end of the year. And only
just to jump in for a second, just to do some conversions for the Americans listening in. That's like 5.5 inches of rain a year, which is next to nothing, really. It's really, really low. So yeah, you guys are in a very arid region by the sounds of it. And comparing that to, sorry to interrupt for a little bit, Jeanette, but just I'm doing some comparisons. I mean, if you compare that to, I don't know what this like in the Stellenbosch Valley, they're getting a significantly more rain in that part of the world, right? Yeah.
They would have about 800, 900, 1,000 millimeters of rain per year. So that's 40 inches of rain per year compared to our 5.5.
Yeah, so they almost got 9-10 times more than you. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yes.
So
that is to our advantage at the end of the day, because we have a much lower incidence of any of the idioms or downy mildews, stuff like that. But the other concern is we need to gather water in big dams and have irrigation systems in place to actually keep the vines growing. Otherwise, we would have no crop any of the year. Last year, or actually in this year, the last 13 months, that analysis that I've given you has changed completely. We had tremendous storms, huge disasters, lost many hectares or many acres of vines that were just washed down. We had 3 times we had floods that were above the 140-year mark.
Wow.
So we are see, and that was happening in the last 13 months. You're welcome to visit the Springfield website and see what it looked like from the air, with 2-3 meters of water over some areas of the vineyards.
Just to jump a little bit in on that, is that evidence of climate change that's happening in the region, or is that just an unusual patch that we're going through at the moment?
I would like to think that it's just an unusual patch that we're going through. It wasn't raining that much here in the Robertson area. It was raining that much in the catchment area. And I mean, with the catchment area just all came together in the Robertson region. But we are clearing that up and replanting and getting restarted again, where the flood devastated a big part of our farm. And luckily, once again, if we had a lot of other investors, they probably would have said, don't plant in that area again. We are farmers. We take the good with the bad, and we're planting in that area again, because some of the vines that we are making from that area is some of our best wines. So let's see how it goes from here. So that, and then the going back to the soil types, we've got 3 very different soil types. Up against the mountain are ice age glaciers, which is quartz, which have moved down to the riverside in the ice age. The middle section, that's very, very interesting, contains about 80% concrete, so very chalky soils. And that brings us to the not just Robertson is not just known for good wines, but it's also good, very well known for horse breeding.
Oh, really?
The horses eat the grass from the chalky soil that contains a lot of calcium, and they grow strong bones. So the racehorse industry is very strong in the Robertson area. And then close to the river, and this is where we've had the flood, is sand, decomposed Table Mountain sandstone, sandy alluvial soils. So for that reason, we can grow many, many different kinds of vineyards at Springfield. And in the 5 generations, we've tried with a lot of vineyards. We've failed with some of them. Some of them are still experimental, and some of them are here to stay forever. So we've covered the rainfall, we've covered the soil. Now we need to cover how we produce our wines, because that's also very unique.
Before we go there, can I just quickly talk about the soil types again? I mean, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you guys have got a lot of rock, sort of like, and especially probably on the higher elevations, I'm guessing, and that is relatively unique to where you're at. And I've heard, this might be a legend, I don't know, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you've had to almost dynamite some of those areas to be able to plant your vines. Is that a correct rumor that I've heard?
For the Life of Stone, Life from Stone vineyard, the name is Life from Stone, because these vines grows on 80% quartz rock.
Right.
And some of it had to be dynamited to get the holes in. We've tried with bulldozers, it was not successful. We've tried with dynamite, which is very successful. We've tried with mechanical drills, which are also successful, but are much slower than and much less impressive than the dynamite that we've used. So Life from Stone is the first wine in South Africa that was actually called a name. The rest was just the name of the estate or whatever, and then Sauvignon Blanc. But this has branded itself as Life from Stone throughout the world. So yes, that's the quartzite part of the farm where we grow some of the Sauvignon and then also some of the Cabernet.
Okay.
Then the calcrete has got also a very nice history. Calcareous soils or calcrete, chalk, everywhere else in the world originates from the seabed, like in Sancerre, that you find a lot of that. You can, if you go back to the fossils that they excavate there, you see that it's from shell origin. In Robertson, the chalk the origin is termites.
Oh wow.
Huge termites, about this size. Prehistoric as well.
Yeah.
So their nests, which are about 30 meters in diameter, has calcified through the years. The fossils we unearthed there is huge termites. And so their nests fossilized, and that gives the calcareous origin of our soils on the calcareous area and at Springfield. Also, the whole area of Robertson.
Amazing. That's really, I've never heard that before, but it's, is it, because you guys I forget how many kilometers you said, but you're quite a way in from the ocean, right?
60 miles, yes.
60 miles. So you don't have that depositing, the oceanic deposit as much as you would do if you're closer to the ocean, right? So that's why you got that sort of variation.
But it's one of the very few places on earth that has got a land-based chalk.
It's very unique.
The rest of the chalk is always from a seabed that receded or sea or that used to be there, but this is termites. And
amazing. Hopefully those massive termites are no longer with us and you don't come across those every day, and they're all historic.
We're grateful, because otherwise we could have been eaten by them. But it's interesting, you know, and then the sandy soil gets brought here by the river. So with little floods and then coming up slowly, receding slowly, it leaves the soil there, which then again gives us the sandy, loamy component on the farm.
Okay.
For that.
Very fascinating.
Now, the third very interesting aspect about Robertson is that in summer we have a 22-degree difference between day temperature and night temperature.
Wow.
So it can be 35 during the day. That night it will still be far below 20, 18, 12 degrees. We've even brought in grapes at 8 degrees at night.
Wow.
So we use that and we harvest white and red grapes from 2 o'clock in the morning until about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. So everything under the cover of darkness, because then we have this really nice low temperatures. You'll see our drivers on the tractors are dressed as if they're working in Arctic conditions, because they bring in the grapes to the cellar and it's really quite cold.
Yeah.
So
the question on that is they're doing the harvesting at night at those sort of really low temperatures. Is it more because of the human factor, or is it has some sort of element that it's going to help with the harvest, the wines, or both, I guess?
It's all about the quality of the wines.
Right.
Because at low temperatures, you've got far less oxidation. Think about having an apple, biting into it, leaving it in the wind and the sun at 35 degrees outside, it turns brown almost immediately. That same apple at night will remain at lower temperatures, would remain crisp. The fruitiness would be there, and much less oxidative characters would develop in the winemaking. Coming to the winemaker, we say we don't want to stick to a winemaker, because the terroir for us is much more important than the winemaker. Having said that, my brother Arbrie is the winemaker. He's taken over from my father, who's taken over from his father, and that is fantastic. He is a magician, because in the summer months, he's firstly a very good weather forecaster. Secondly, he thinks like a wild yeast, or like a vine when it's ripening and when he needs to pick. And there's no tests in labs. He picks according to taste. And so Arbrie is the winemaker. His youngest daughter, Emma, is also joined us, and she is our bubbly sparkling wine, or CC maker. So it's all being kept in the family, and it's a wonderful privilege to have that. So bringing in the grapes at night, that's already quite unique. Then the grapes are crushed, the white grapes, and then given about 5 hours of skin contact in rotor containers, and then only the free run juice is used for our winemaking. So if we press, that goes separately. We don't use that. We love the juice that flows from the skins unhindered, just as a free run. And then, quite unique, those free run juices gets placed in tanks, stainless steel tanks, that are insulated around it, and we cool that grape juice to -4 degrees. And that gives us a beautiful low alcohol wine, but with a bigger body. We leave it like that for up to 3 months. We keep on stirring it so that it stays in suspension. It obviously doesn't freeze at -4 degrees because it's still full of sugar.
Yep.
Then after the 3 weeks to 3 months, we would bring up the temperature, inoculate on some of our wines with yeast that are produced in a lab, and then see the fermentation happening. And then after about 9 days, the fermentation is over. Then it will still lie on the primary lees to build character and complexity. And then it would be racked off that, only given a bit bentonite fining, and then bottled. Then it goes into storage for a couple of months to get over bottle shock, and then it goes onto the market.
Okay. That process across all the range, is that right, or is it very dramatically?
That process is for light from stone.
Yeah.
For special Cuvee, almost Lucy, and for Albariño.
Okay.
So those are the 4 wines that we inoculate, that we don't make with natural yeast. So that this is what I've explained about these 4 wines. Interestingly, we've got 2 Sauvignons. That the one is grown on the rocky soil, and the special Cuvee is grown where we've had the extreme devastation with the flood now. So the special Cuvee is grown on sand. And it's so interesting to taste these 2 wines side by side. It's the same clone, same vinification, but the one is on rock, and the other one is on sand.
What is the? I don't know if we're going to get into that, but is there? Fascinating. You've got these 2 Sauvignons. Is there a distinct taste profile difference? I'm assuming so, but is there? Yeah. So it's because of the terroir and the elevation and obviously, it sounds like you produce it the same way. It's more about the terroir and the climate and the elevation, I'm guessing. Yeah.
So the rocky soils remain warmer longer because the rocks absorb the heat. Right. Where the sand gives off the heat at night. So they've got very different growing ways of growing. And the rocky one depicts the flintiness, the like gunpowder, flint, also earthy saltiness, where the special Cuvee is a very ladylike Sauvignon Blanc. More tropical fruit, rounder. This one depicts the harsh growing conditions on the rocks, and this one the lovely, more friendly conditions of growing.
Okay, understood.
Then we have a beautiful Miss Lucy, which is nickname is the fish, Miss Lucy, and this is a blend of very, very strange blend. It's Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon, Pinot Gris, and Sauvignon Gris.
Interesting.
So 4 very unlike partners in a blend. So normally the blend would be between Sauvignon and Semillon, still Bordeaux white blend. But then we've added Pinot Gris and Sauvignon Gris because this wine is the best wine to have with sushi or any kind of fish that you want to eat. The Pinot Gris and the Sauvignon Gris gives the flavor profile if you are cooking with a little bit of spice, Cajun spiciness, stuff like that. And then Albariño, just for fun. 2 producers in South Africa that produces Albariño, and you need to keep your wits with you. You can't just do what you've learned all your life. You must try something new. And this we discovered in Uruguay. It became a very, very favorite wine of us. And then you need to make it yourself and put your own stamp on it. So we're experimenting with this on the rocky soil, on the calcareous soil, and on the sandy soil, and see what we like best. At the moment, all of them are going into one blend. But I think we will give preference to the calcareous soils in the future.
Okay.
So those are the white wines that are fermented with inoculated yeast.
Amazing. And then you've got a, sorry, I keep interrupting, but I was about to say, we're going to go into the Chardonnay now, which is wild fermented, is it not?
Yes, it's a Chardonnay like in Burgundy, grown on the calcareous soils.
Yeah.
And with these two Chardonnays, the whites and all the reds are made with natural yeast.
Okay.
And natural yeast, if I may describe just a little bit for the viewers who are not familiar with natural yeast. On the outside, on the skin of any fruit, you find like almost a waxy layer. Like on an apple, if you rub it and you look at it and it's shiny, you have then rubbed off the natural yeast. Like on a berry of a grape, when you've made it shiny, you've rubbed off the natural yeast. So each bunch of fruit can have several hundred different families of yeasts living on the outer skin of the grape. And if you do natural fermentation, you use those variety of yeasts to do the fermentation for you. It's risky because there might just be a handful of this and a lot of that. It might be that the yeasts are unhappy and they stop fermenting. In the last 10 years, we've lost 2 vintages of the wild yeast Chardonnay, and we lost 4 vintages of the Methode Ancienne Chardonnay. And that happens if the fermenting yeasts are stopping their fermentation, sometimes 6 months down the line. Or inoculated fermentation takes 9 days. Natural fermentation on white wine takes anything up to 9 months. And during any time during that, it can stop and refuse to start again. And then you are stuck with high sugar on the juice and volatile acidity. Volatile acidity, if that goes on, it will end up, your wine will end up as vinegar. But long before it ends up as vinegar, you must get it out of your cellar, because those yeast cells, the volatile acidity, the acetic acid that's in there, if that becomes airborne, it can contaminate your whole cellar. So we try this every year with these 2 wines because it's fantastic when it works. And
I was going to ask, so you go through all of this risk and all this, probably stress through this process, but what does that equal at the end if you get it right? There must be a real value return against that.
We hate making Coca Cola at Springfield. We also hate knowing the outcome. There must be, it's like life. If you take a risk and the risk pays off, it's fantastic. So we take risks with these 2 every year, and we learn a lot. We see how the yeast develops. We see what in nature makes the yeast stop and what doesn't. And a lot of people say, but you're stupid to try it every year, because on the wild yeast, this one is unoaked. It's fermented in old underground cement, or what would you call cement in America?
It's the same.
Cement.
Yeah.
Old underground, more than 150-year-old underground cement concrete tanks, while the Methode Ancienne is fermented in 500-liter barrels. So if the wild yeast stops fermenting, then we lose only the wine.
Right.
But if the Methode Ancienne stops fermenting, we lose the barrel as well.
Wow.
And
that is
the Methode Ancienne also reflects the name of the method that we are using to Methode Ancienne, the ancient way of making wine, with the natural yeast in barrels, and also then at the end, no fining, no filtration. So this is as natural a wine as you can get. The wild yeast is unoaked. And also the name, again, says something about how we work. The wild yeast, this is wild yeast, and both are Chardonnays.
Nice.
Quite interesting if you look at different winemaking techniques, that we work firstly with the inoculated yeast side of the whites, very differently than other winemakers. And with the natural yeast, we risk everything. And we say winemaking is like bringing up children. You can't say what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
Only experience the moment and what your return is at the end. Whether you can have from the same household, you can have a priest and somebody who goes to jail. And they've been brought up exactly the same. So this is the same with wild yeast making. You can have the priest and the jailbird on the natural yeast side of things.
So it's like what we always say about my kids, there's no textbook, right? There's no textbook to be able to get exactly what you want at the end of it. So it's a similar analogy. Yeah, that's quite nice. I like that.
But it's wonderful to see how these wines develop. These, especially the two Chardonnays. The Methode Ancienne Chardonnay is a 2020 vintage, and this is a wine that you can drink for the next 15 years very easily. And that's quite an accolade from a white wine from South Africa.
Yeah, for sure. So it has a longevity to it. You can cellar it for what you said it was 20 years, as long as 20 years.
I would drink it easily for the next 15 years.
Well, that's quite unique as well, just to have a white that can have that longevity in it.
And also tastes much nicer decanted. So, and so shall we start with the red wines then?
Yeah, let's go. Now, I keep looking on my other screen here because I do have your profile, or at least your portfolio in front of you. We've gone through those. The only thing we haven't, have we touched on the Brut? Is that a white?
I'm keeping that for last.
Okay, good. So celebration for the end. So yes, let's move on to your beautiful reds.
By the way, all the bottles comes very nicely wrapped.
Yeah.
So it's ready to be gifted as well.
Yeah. We've got when we brought them across, that's always been a good experience. Being able to open the box and see how well it's presented within the packaging. It is beautiful.
For the red wines, the first one, the whole berry Cabernet, explains the vinification method of all of the reds.
Okay.
This is called whole berry because we do not crush our grapes for various reasons. The reds, if you crush the reds, for us, we don't want the bitterness of the seed that's crushed. When you eat a grape, you chew it, you chew the seed, it's bitter, it's not tasting very good. So we bring in the grapes, we de-stem them, take the berries off the stem, we take the berries up on a conveyor belt into gravity flow tanks at the top. There the berries are nicely stacked very gently. And then they are brought down to 3 degrees centigrade. Because remember now, there's no sulfur added on any of this. So the berries can start to ferment if they're warm enough. So we bring the temperature down to inhibit the natural yeast, to make it cold enough so that we don't have spontaneous fermentation immediately. Then for 10 days, these cold berries are lying on top of one another. And with their own weight, they're squeezing out the juice.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that is very interesting. I don't know of another winery.
Yeah, it's the first I've heard of that. Yeah, that's really fascinating.
Then after the 10 days, when most of the juice are squeezed out by their own weight, we switch off the temperature And as the temperature starts to rise, the natural yeasts that's been in a slumber, because of the cold, they wake up and very slowly, at low concentrations, they start the fermentation. When the fermentation is full blown or in the run, we would start the punching through 3 times a day, pumping over the wine over the cap again. And after about 3 or 4 weeks, the fermentation is complete, and we would then once again only drain the free run juice by gravity into the barrels where it's then maturing. So for the whole berry, we leave it around about 15 months in a combination of first, second, and third full barrels. We rack the barrels. Do I need to explain racking a little bit?
If you wouldn't mind just giving a bit of a definition for those that may not know what that means. Yep.
So imagine now a 300-liter wooden barrel comes from France, because we can't use South African oak because our oak grows too fast. So you can either use Hungarian, Russian, American, or French oak. So we've chosen French oak because that suits our style the best. But the wine is now lying in there to mature. So we rack it. In other words, we pump the wine from one barrel into a tank, and we leave the little bit of lees that is formed. Maybe 1 liter or 2 liters of lees of the dead yeast cells that have now sunk to the bottom, that we leave in the barrel. The wine is out, then we wash the barrel, clean it, sanitize it, and put the wine back. That is what is racking. So we do racking every 3 months on all our reds, because then at the end of the 15 months or 2 years, however long it spends in the barrel, the wine is clean enough. All those little parts that sunk to the bottom has been removed. The wine is clean enough and clear enough that we don't have to go through the negativity of filtration. We don't have to go through the negativity of adding substances to the wine to put the negative and positive particles together. That's called fining. So that's why all our wines are also vegan and vegetarian
friendly. Yeah.
So that's the whole berry. It's 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. Then we get to the work of time. Beautiful Bordeaux style blend, always led by Cabernet Franc. So we've got Cabernet Franc, Merlot. Those are the 2 main partners here. And then Cabernet Sauvignon and Petit Verdot. So the current vintage that we are selling is 2018. So this stays 2 years in barrel and then 4 years in bottle before we release. And the beauty of the name, the work of time, is in the olden days we had flood irrigation. So you would put a lot of water at the high end of the vineyard, and it would run down to the lower end of the vineyard. But then we had to, in those days, the ancestors and us had to plant from north to south, because north is high against the mountain and low is in the river. But then the sun comes up in the east, and the morning sun is always cool sun, and the sun sets in the west. The afternoon sun is always hot sun. So we had unripe grapes on the eastern side when we've got ripe grapes on the western side. So in my generation, we ripped up a lot of the vineyards. With drip irrigation, we could now plant east-west and let the sun go over them and ripen them equally on both sides. It took us 16 years to put the building blocks of this together. And then it took us 270 bottles of wine between myself and my brother to find a name for this. We didn't drink them all. Not the whole,
That's a lot of wine. Yeah.
but it took us 2 years and 270 bottles of wine.
Yeah.
We used to call it our homework. So
Okay.
every night we would take one home, and then we would taste it until we reach a name for the wine. In any case, in the end, we settled on the work of time. So
It's actually, by the way you describe how you've gone through that process of trying to define it, to find the name, to clarify what's in the bottle. The name kind of suits it. It's a relevant and good name.
it's also one that can stand the test of time. It's fantastic with many types of food. And for 2018, also possible to last quite a long time.
Okay.
Warren, how much time do we still have?
We can keep going. I mean, I'm more concerned about your time.
Okay.
As long as you
I'll hurry up.
Yeah.
The Methode Ancienne.
Yeah.
Again, the ancient way of making wine.
Yeah.
That's again a Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah.
And like the life from stone, this is also made on that 80% quartz site. Lots of rock. This is the 2016 that we are. That's our current vintage. This is also 2 years in new barrels, and then 5 years in bottle before we release. This is, you're not supposed to have favorites, but this is one of my favorites.
The Ancienne. Which
the
one is it?
Ancienne.
Yeah, the Ancienne. So I'll keep my pronunciation right. Ancienne. Okay. Yes.
And then we have a wine called Thunderchild.
Yes.
This is not our wine. This is a wine that we make for the orphanage in Robertson.
Okay.
In 1918, there was the big Spanish flu that ravaged the world, and many people died. It was much more serious than COVID. And the need for an orphanage was there. So there was an orphanage started. It grew in size and with the children. They also had lots of bequeathments of land, well, not much land, but 5 hectares of land. And then they wanted to sell this to develop real estate. And my mother was passionate about the orphanage, and she said, no, there will be a vineyard planted. Springfield will make the wine. And now we do this, and it's since 2002, this vineyard was planted, and all the proceeds goes 100% to the educational trust of these 122 children, whether it's after school to go to university, or during the growing up, some educational needs for the children, getting driver's licenses, all sorts of things like that. There's enough money to send any child who is in the orphanage in the right direction. Also, sending them to schools that suits their learning patterns the best. So this is a huge contribution to that. And then you said you needed something strange or funny.
Yes.
This is our sparkling wine. We're not allowed to call it champagne, although it's made in the same traditional method. We're also not allowed to call it Methode Cup Classique, as it was called in South Africa until about 3 months ago. The French are not happy with Methode Cup Classique.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They say it's a method, it's not a wine. So now we are only allowed to call it Cup Classique. Cup standing for Cape. South Africa, the classic method of doing sparkling wine, the bottle fermentation, secondary fermentation. And my brother's youngest daughter is doing this. The wine's name is Carusis. But in the real, my mother was Namibian. She grew up there, and this is the place where they took their cattle and their animals when it was really dry. In bush, the language that she also spoke, it was, they said it's karusis. And this was meant in their language, the place of fresh bubbling water. That's why they took their animals and their households to karusis when it was dry. So this, we are a family known to really taste and sample our own our own wine, and we never release a vintage that we're not happy with. You laughed when I said it took us 270 bottles to come to this name.
Yeah.
We had a name from day one when we made this, but we had the children's marriages, so we between friends and family, we drank 2 vintages of this. And this is the vintage that we made enough of to release it to the...
So this is your first vintage was all for friends and family.
Yeah, this is the vintage that we will make money out of.
Okay. But that's a great story in its own right. It's like you guys are so passionate about the wine, you're so excited about it that you consume it first as almost an experiment for yourselves, and then you take it out into the world after that.
And we say we only sell what we can't drink ourselves.
Oh, that sounds dangerous. That sounds dangerous.
Listen, it's a beautiful country that we live in, and I mean, you know that you've lived here as well. We've got our challenges, but South Africans are exceptional about overcoming challenges. And it's fantastic for the Americans who are starting to come to South Africa. And it's an open invitation. Warren has got my email address. If you decide to come to South Africa, you want to visit us at Springfield, we'll welcome you with open arms, show you firsthand what we've talked about now. And I really, really hope that that I can welcome you to South Africa and show you the beauty, the bounty that we have here. On top of that, there is almost 18 Rand to $1 at the moment. So it is so cheap for Americans to travel here. It's almost unbelievable. Yeah.
I love that thought as a closing thought. I mean, I think just to build on that a little bit, if I can, the essence and the philosophy and the in Afrikaans you call it the gees, the sort of the spirit, I guess, of South African people you see around the world. And I engage with a lot of South Africans here in the United States, and that what you just described about that really sort of strong, persistent, positive, optimistic element of South Africans is still felt even when they're leaving South Africa, and in other parts of the world they bring it to wherever they are, which is always amazing to see. Jeanette, thank you so much. This was so informative, and I definitely think some of our folks that are watching this will take you up on your invitation to come and visit. I know I want to come down there in the very near future. But thank you so much for this really, really informative session, and we'll be speaking very soon as our members and our club put their orders in for this next window, which will be in the next couple of weeks. And we can't wait to get the wines across here and enjoy exactly what you described to us.
We send our own sunshine and our tenacity with our wines. So thank you very much. It was great talking to you.
Thanks, Jeanette.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.